Hello, everybody, and welcome to Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodities space. My name is Jesse Day. Before we dive in, standard disclaimer, nothing here is investment advice. Do your own due diligence. And today's guest is the CEO of Temas Resources, a company focused on advanced iron, titanium, vanadium projects in Quebec. We're going to hone in on the titanium market today, along with discussing Temas's projects. It's Tim Fernback. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks, Jesse. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you here because titanium is a commodity that is not discussed enough, in my opinion. So let's start with an overview of titanium. And could you run us through the main use cases? Because most people think of bulletproof armor, they think of a super strong metal, they think of maybe aerospace. What are the main uses for titanium today?
Sure. Yeah, no, there a little bit of background is always really helpful here because there's titanium dioxide, which we're actually exploring for on the property, and that's something that is more naturally occurring in the environment. You refine this into titanium metal, so there are a lot of uses for titanium dioxide on its own. It's a $19 billion industry today just for the industrial compound. And there are countless uses for that, which I'm sure we'll get into later on in the interview. But basically, it's the ninth most abundant metal on the planet. The trick for us as miners is to find it in sufficient quantity and grade to make it a mineral exploration prospect. And the good thing about being in Canada is that we have a great province of Quebec that is a titanium rich area. And there has been some really good, past experiences with companies like Rio Tinto, majors that have titanium dioxide mining operations and have had them for over 70 years in the province. So it's a widely used metal. It's used internationally, as you mentioned, in the aerospace industry. It's very heat resistant and it's biocompatible. So one of the main uses for titanium as a metal is that it is in like medical implants. So you can put this in your body and there's no toxic effect to it there. And actually muscle forms around the titanium as well. It forms actually part of your body like a bone would. So it's very highly used in those fields, those specialized metal fields, because it is, it's non-toxic, it's non-corrosive. It has, it's very strong metal and it's lightweight. What differentiates it from, like, say, aluminum or steel, which, they're corrosive, and steel's a little bit heavier in weight. They're all strong. Aluminum's not quite as strong as titanium, but they all have their pros and cons. But it's one of the main metal alloys out there. And then, of course, titanium dioxide, it's used in paints and pigments and all sorts of things. The main use is a brightener because it is so highly reflective.
Yeah, well, talk to us a little bit more about titanium dioxide, because one thing you were mentioning before we hit record today is that there is a steady stream of demand for that commodity as opposed to some other commodities which are much more cyclical. So maybe you could walk us through that.
I think it's largely to do with the fact that there's not a single buyer or a single supplier of titanium. It's very pervasive, and the number of products that it's actually in is mind-blowing. It's in everything from a coating on a solar panel to the whitener and brightener in a icing inside a donut on a donut, right? Like it's very, very common and well used item. I'd say there are probably, like 20, 30 major titanium dioxide mines mining the product on the planet right now. Some are coming off life, and that's why our company makes a very compelling prospect for the future as these supply side constraints come off. And then on the demand side, it's a constant growth, 5%, 6% a year. It grows with the overall economy. It's in use primarily in paints and pigments, but it's in the cosmetic industry as a brightener. I think that you talk about it in the titanium documentary a bit about how, you could put a series of pharmaceutical pills on your counter And because of the brightness and the particular color and the size of them, you can see which one is Tylenol and Advil. And it's a safety thing for the pharmaceutical industry. But because it's so highly reflective, it provides an actual effective coating to protect the efficacy of the pharmaceutical product. So that's just one of many uses here. But you want a bright colored paper, you use titanium dioxide. You want a bright colored paints on your walls. Well, you can't use lead oxide anymore. You've got to use titanium dioxide to make that happen. And it's all just because it's such a highly reflective metal.
Yeah, truly fascinating. I was blown away by the number of uses for titanium and titanium dioxide when I was putting together the documentary you mentioned on titanium, which is on this channel. So I'll also put a link to that in the description below for people who want to dive more into the science, the history of titanium as a commodity. Could you shed some light on how titanium dioxide, the supply chain, how that's currently set up? Where does most of it come from in the world today? And why is it important to secure a domestic supply within Canada?
Yeah, those are really good points and a good question. So the main markets for titanium dioxide, like where it comes from supply, you just look at the largest natural resource suppliers in the world, and that's where it's from. So China is the largest supplier of titanium dioxide, but the US is another, Canada, Australia, Russia. So all of these countries that have vast geographic resources and demand for the actual metal and product are suppliers of this globally. And on top of that, you've got China. There's probably about 40 to 50% of the world's supply comes from China, but probably about 40 to 50% of the world's products are made in China, and that demand is satisfied inside China. There's such a push right now in North America and throughout the world to secure your supply chain. You've got the Inflation Reduction Act that has come into place in the U.S. and even though it's called Inflation Reduction Act, one of the main characteristics of that act is to secure the supply chain for raw minerals. And titanium is a critical metal. It is one that is looked at as a kind of a strategic supply. And in order for you to get like kind of the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act, you need to actually have your metal produced in one of either Canada or the U.S. To take advantage of that. And because we're in Quebec and because it's a North American supply and there's this momentum to kind of secure domestic supplies both in Canada and the US, it's very compelling to develop another titanium dioxide mine inside Canada.
And I'm curious if the Canadian government has declared titanium a critical mineral. If not, do you see that unfolding in the future? And how does government policy in this case, with the importance of securing a domestic supply of all sorts of metals and minerals? China has recently restricted export of certain commodities. Graphite's one of them, rare earths as well. So obviously, this is a very kind of really recent issue that governments are having to grapple with. So what does the lay of the land look like in Canada right now in terms of the government policies addressing titanium specifically?
Yeah, so in Canada, it's looked as a strategic metal and mineral. The critical minerals list and the critical minerals strategy documents that they have lists a lot of the rare earth metals. So ones that are used in very small quantity, but very important in primarily like the technology industry. So you've got your iPhone, for example, the motherboard on the iPhone has like 40 or 50 different minerals inside that. Some of them are just little kind of tiny amounts, but they perform very, very specific functions within technology, whether they're conducting electricity or they're used for coatings or whatnot. But that's where the Canadian government has really focused on. And because we're one of the main global suppliers of titanium, I think that it's an important strategic metal, but it's not one that's in critical low supply inside Canada. So I think that's the reason why Canada's probably taken well, we have supply of this. We don't need to necessarily protect it. It's being used internationally, and there's high demand internationally for it. So if there was ever like a domestic need that was pressing, they could always just secure the supply, say from Rio Tinto's Lac Brule project, for example. It's a 70-year mine life. It's got 20 years left on it. There's over 60 million tons of ore have been kind of processed there over the years. We do have the mineral in supply. The U.S. they've taken a bit of a different approach because they have such a huge aerospace industry. To secure the titanium dioxide and to create the metal for it. So I think they have a slightly different incentive to make sure that we have the North America has a supply of that actual mineral for the metal. And then, of course, if you want to put it in all these consumer products and industrial purposes, well, you definitely need, titanium dioxide. There's, thousands and thousands of products that it's found in, and it's safe to consume. So it's in a lot of food products that we eat because we really like visually appealing, colors and also at the same time, if it's non-toxic or not harmful to you, then it's a perfect product to be putting into like the colorants, right, and pigments.
Right. And how do you see the titanium market evolving moving forward? Obviously, you have a very unique view on the industry. What are some of the things you think will occur in the future regarding titanium that you think investors should be paying attention to?
I think first and foremost, it is a product that the demand for it fluctuates with the overall economy, global economy. And the global economy is growing at a steady state and has done so for the last 100 years. That's why you have a solid 5-6% growth in titanium dioxide, because it's in parallel with the overall economy. So there's so many uses for it. It's pervasive. It's international. The number of uses are international that I think that you're having a direct one-to-one relationship with the overall economy. So that's first and foremost on the demand side. And I think that is going to continue. We're not going to slow down painting our houses anytime soon. That is always going to be there, and it's always going to be used in the cosmetics industry as a sunscreen, or in the pharmaceuticals industry, as we talked about before, even the plastics industry. So the demand, I think, is very solid and stable. And then at the same time, you don't have like large suppliers or large purchasers of the metal. So you don't have supply side or buy side shocks that are happening because one person decides to no longer require the metal. They divested a business or something. It doesn't have that kind of up and down as you would see in, like, say, the lithium or uranium markets or something like that. And then on top of it, you've got the fact that there's a couple main suppliers of titanium dioxide, these mines that have been in production for over 70, 80 years, specifically in Europe and elsewhere, where they're coming offline. So there are two major mines that are coming offline, say in the next 3 to 5 years. And there'll be an upward pressure, I think, on the commodity price, but also, if you've got an advanced project like we do in Quebec, we're in a really good state because in that same period of time, we'll get our projects towards like advanced stages and actually through to the feasibility stage.
Great. Well, I think that's a awesome segue into discussing Temas Resources. So could you start by giving us an overview of the company?
Sure. I think you mentioned earlier we're a mineral explorer in Canada. We have a focus on titanium dioxide, iron ore, and vanadium. And the reason why we're interested in iron ore and vanadium is because they're prolific near our titanium dioxide, where titanium is found. And specifically, we have two advanced projects in Quebec. And in this Grenville area of Quebec, it's very prolific for iron ore, vanadium, titanium. And there is, like I mentioned, the Rio Tinto has the Lac Brule mine that's been in operation for over 70 years. That's just about 400 kilometers away from our properties. We're well situated. Our two properties are well situated, about 100 kilometers away from each other. but they're in an area that's not too far from Saguenay or Baie-Comeau. So it's a couple hundred kilometers by highway off of the St. Lawrence. So both projects are well situated. They both have, we're just coming out with our PEA on Blache, which has an inferred resource, which is quite interesting and huge. And really compelling for the investor, which I guess we can get into a little bit later. But Blache and Lac Brule are our two projects there in Quebec. Quebec's a mining-friendly area, and then the area that we're in is actually there's a lot of resources that we can draw from, whether it's a talented labor pool or the mining supplies and suppliers and other companies in the same boat. So it's a really good area to be operating in. The Quebec government's very favorable towards mining. It's one of the main mining jurisdictions in Canada. And we're really happy to be operating there.
Well, let's hone in on Blache specifically. Give us some more details on that project. Run us through the PEA numbers as well, because they're very compelling. I was actually talking to a mining analyst here in Serbia the other day, and when I mentioned Temas Resources, he brought up the PEA numbers and said that they looked great. And he's a guy who spends his days just diving deep into mining companies. So I think that was high praise coming from him. Could you maybe unroll those for us and give us some more details on Blache?
Yeah, okay. So just in general, Blache, it is like I mentioned, well situated in Quebec. It's helicopter access only, but it's nearby to a paved highway, and there's logging road access and whatnot into the property. Our plan eventually will be to connecting that with a proper road once we're doing more of the activities there. But we've drilled over 15,000 meters at Blache. There's 127 claims, and then just on March 27th, we announced that there's another 44 claim blocks that we've just purchased in the area. So we've really consolidated that whole region. And the PEA that you mentioned, we announced the original summary of it back in February, but we'll be actually filing our PEA probably within the week and having the information available to everyone. But it's a $6 billion NPV, post-tax NPV, IRR, internal rate of return post-tax of greater than 55%. Like I said, there's 208 million tons of ore on the property, but 25 million tons of that is titanium dioxide, and 86 million tons is the iron oxide. So it's a very, very, prolific area. The project is a fantastic project. Those numbers jump off the page basically when you read them. And we're at we've been doing a lot of work quietly on that project, and now we're ready to start talking about it. And that's part of the reason why we're here talking to you today, but also, involved in other kind of communications plans on Blache. So it's a great project. You'll hear lots more from it. We're heading that project towards a feasibility stage, and that's the Blache project.
Great. Well, definitely looking forward to keeping up to date on that and seeing the full PEA. Now, let's discuss the Lac Brule project. What are the most compelling attributes of that project that you think people should be taking a look at?
So for the first thing, Jesse, I think you've got to get your French accent a little bit better there. It's the Lac Brule property.
Okay, I am actually a part Quebecois, so if I was to put it on full French accent, maybe I would say Lac Brule, but Lac Brule, I guess would be it. But yes, it does need work. Thank you for pointing that out.
No, so yeah, it's another great project that we have. It's also titanium, iron oxide, and also vanadium. It's a smaller land package, so it's only 36 claims over 2,000 hectares, which is large enough for a mining prospect for sure. The ore is actually closer to surface, and so it's a higher grade, closer to surface, smaller project than our primary project. Our plan is to do a little bit more drilling on that project this year. We'll probably do about 7,000 meters of drilling, get that to the stage where it is also at the PEA stage, and that will be the plan for that project. Another great one, it's about 100 kilometers away from our Blache project, which is fantastic for work crews and whatnot. And it's serviceable by the same area: Saguenay, Baie-Comeau, Port Cartier, Sept-Îles. All of these areas are feeding that zone that we want to call our primary titanium dioxide resource zone.
Great. Well, could you outline what your plans are at both properties? What is some maybe upcoming news flow that investors can look out for here in 2024, and anything reaching out further that you want to discuss? Let us know about that too.
So for La Blache, we just announced, like I said recently, the addition of some claims that consolidate the region. We will be filing our PEA, and the information on that huge document will be available for investors. They can look at our numbers and look at what was done and the metallurgy, and really truly understand this is a great project in Quebec. Over the next 18 months, we'll be transitioning the project towards a pre-feasibility stage. So that will involve some additional drilling, some environmental work to be done on it, just getting it ready to the point where we could then take the project and really market it to majors. Like I mentioned Rio Tinto a couple times here, but Rio Tinto is a likely target of ours for eventual purchase of the project, right? If we're going to be moving that project towards completion, it's going to cost about over $1 billion in capex to get it going. So a small company like ours doesn't have the financial wherewithal to put $1 billion together right now. So it's better for us to partner with a bigger group later on that's in the industry. And there are probably about 20 different groups that we could approach that are likely purchasers of that project or partners on that project. Rio Tinto being one of them. So we'll be doing a lot of that community involvement. I'm going to be on the road quite a bit talking to investors. Like I said, we've been pretty quiet the last little while, just doing our work, getting everything, our ducks in a row, I guess. And now we're ready to kind of talk a bit more about the project and why it's so important and why these numbers are so compelling to the investor. And I think our little, $5 million market cap company will be quite a bit different in the next 18 months once that knowledge gets out there about what we have there. So that should be pretty positive for the investors, I'm hoping. We've got a small financing that we're doing right now, and part of the proceeds of that financing will be used for marketing and investor relations and public relations all around this project. Advancing it to this pre-feasibility stage. We'll be spending some money on the prep work for that, but also just community involvement, involved with the First Nations, continue that process, involved with the Quebec government. There's a lot of funds that are potentially available for mine development that we want to get access to, because this is really a strategic metal that we're talking about. So that would be La Blache. And then at Lac Brule, we're going to basically be doing a little bit of drilling, getting that to a PEA status. So we'll be active on that property as well. So, and then hopefully we'll be able to fund all of this through a larger institutional financing. So I think the financing that we're doing right now is kind of the last retail financing that we'll be doing. And then after that, it'll be more of an institutional financing targets that we'll be going for.
Great, very exciting stuff. It's been an honor to chat with you, Tim. I had a ton of fun, learned a lot along the way. Before I do let you go, is there any final words maybe you want to share about Temas Resources?
I just say keep your eyes open for us. We are a small and mighty company. We didn't even talk about our team, but we have a great mineral exploration team. We're surrounded by, the folks on our board are all infrastructure builders. They've built large projects before. So our plan is to build up this particular project and then ultimately probably sell it off or partner with a larger major. And that's what the heavy work that we're going to be doing over the next 18 months. So look out for us. You might see us on the road. You might see us kind of doing doing our kind of investor awareness campaigns, which we'll be looking forward to. And then you'll see the progress that we're going to have at both of these projects. So we're going to focus on our 2 projects in Quebec.
Love it. And investor awareness, such a key piece of the puzzle that a lot of companies don't incorporate. So it's great to hear about that. I will put a link to the Temas Resources website as well as social media in the description below for people who do want to learn more. Thank you once again, Tim, for coming on and sharing your knowledge with the audience.
Hey, thanks, Jesse. I'm happy to be here and happy to be with you here.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.